if I'm not mistaken, you've got a micro case study on really doing live production in these COVID times. So I'd like to turn things over to you, please.
Thank you very much. So just want to say this is not my not something from my day job. This is from my stuff that I'm doing outside. Can you someone just confirm whether they can actually see my screen okay? Because I'm always
looks good. We see it just fine. It looks great.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to rattle through this. So COVID has had a kind of strange effect on all of us. Just so you know where I'm living, so I'm down there on the east coast, southeast coast of the UK, in a little place called Felixstowe, about a mile from the sea. So the challenge of 2020, I guess everyone has had an experience on this throughout the wherever you are. But the challenge specifically out of work at my church was that suddenly no one was allowed to go anywhere, meet up with anyone. And how are we going to do live services and keep that thing going? So and the very strict rules in the UK were as at the first, no one was allowed in your house or in your garden, and you weren't allowed to go anywhere, and the show must go on. So we've got technology pretty good, although I live in the countryside, a pretty good internet connection, but as we were talking to Chris just now, best efforts network and inherent latency, and also pretty well zero budget. So how do we go about doing this? So here is a summary in one slide of the kind of toolkit of apps which I've been using to do this broadcasting. Some of them will be very familiar, some of them may be slightly less familiar, and I'm just going to unpack them very briefly in the next 5 minutes to give you a flavor of kind of how we did this. And also the really great thing is, apart from one of these apps, all of them are cost-free if you're using them for private or non-profit making use. So of all of these, the thing that really made the whole thing viable is Teamviewer, because I don't know if you've been using it. I've been my whole wider family's IT support for the last 15 years or 20 years using Teamviewer. Great for doing remote access, remote machine control. But they've, at some point in the history of the development, they added audio, bidirectional audio, so you can actually use that. And what's that allowed us to do was for me to actually set up here at home 3 different computers that I could have 3 different people joining to actually do some control. So I had a remote control team. I had someone in one house about a mile away running the vision mixer, again using Teamviewer remote control. I had somebody else doing the sound mix and somebody else doing the graphics control, and they were each remotely controlling 3 different computers in the very room that I'm speaking to you from here in my house. And because there's audio, bidirectional audio, they could have audio cues themselves. That didn't need to be the final audio mix as well, so that we could have intercom. We could use those audio channels as intercom as well. So what we had was some 3 local cameras, HDMI cameras, which we interfaced into one laptop and then used NDI to actually get it back into the machine. We were running the OBS server on. This is, as opposed to Kieran, this is the OBS Studio software, the free software. And then we are broadcasting that up to YouTube. Additionally, Skype has a very useful NDI plugin. So we had a separate laptop running Skype up, which we were able to pull into the machine from there, and a separate machine under Teamviewer control running graphics. What about the audio? So I have a digital desk here because I have a recording studio. So we were able to connect in all of the instruments and microphones. When I say all of them, on day one, it was just me and my wife because we weren't allowed anybody else, and interconnect the audio from all of these other systems. So NDI was very useful. I can talk in my professional day job about why NDI is not fit for purpose for some applications, but for this application, it was really great. And we used that to hand off the video feeds between many different devices in the setup. And then obviously using OBS to go into YouTube to get up for the actual broadcast. So here is the OBS Studio software. Just gives you a little example here. You can't see the multi-viewer head here because it's on a separate screen, but you create what they call scenes here, and the operator can actually move between scenes. Each scene can be stacked, it can have different layers, and the person can remote. And I had one guy actually running OBS remotely from their house with just using the remote graphics. So this was phase 1 of our broadcasting. indoors when we weren't letting anybody else. So you can see it's just me. So I had the piano, the bass line on a synth and a kick drum. That's as much music as I can make with my limbs. And my wife and I had vocal microphones there. You can see the 2 cameras in there. We had a camera outside for beauty shots. Then we moved to phase 2. Suddenly, after 2 months of lockdown, we were allowed to have 6 people in the garden. So we made good use of that. You can see here, drum kit set up there. Fortunately, it was pretty good weather. I don't think we had any problems, or we did put the gazebo up just in case. You can see like some of the kit inside as well with the multi-viewer and the desk, etc. So that's how we did, and even that upstairs window, bottom right there, where I had an aerial camera shot as well, and the old British Telecom umbrella protecting one of the other cameras. So that was phase 2, and then a little bit later on in lockdown, we were allowed to have a limited number of people back at the church building. So we evolved it a bit more, using pretty well the similar bits of technology. Used some actual low-cost PTZ 1080p security cameras, so that they were controllable, because what we wanted to do is to make this thing remotely controllable as well. The audio, again, lots of a similar kind of setup. Also great being able to do multi-track record the rehearsals and then preview, listen to them and check the mix before it went live as well. So this is the audio side of all of the interconnectivity. Again, all of this going over the IP. So this is a couple of the operators in the church building. We've repurposed the church office as our sound mixing suite with this remote app. And then we've got somebody doing the OBS studio in there. You can see with the multi-viewer head on the right-hand side there for the OBS studio there. So the whole thing we initially did for 0 cost. We then spent to get a decent computer for the church building. We spent in total about £1,500 to actually kit out the whole thing. So just to say that broadcasting can be a relatively low-cost exercise if you're prepared to make some compromises, and but it's worked incredibly well. What were the challenges? Well, one of the biggest challenges, I have to say, was lip sync, and I'm going to talk about AV sync and timing tomorrow in my day job. But timing was a challenge, but actually overall it went really, really well. So this is actually a quad split of 4 different services which we did at different points. You can see the weather's been pretty good to us during last summer. So this is just the kind of way we produced it. You'll see we moved to a proper grade down lower third in the bottom right as we got closer. So as we matured and went back to the church building, but lots of fun, lots of use of free technology. And the streams have been pretty well flawless. You know, one or two early days, things about getting lip sync sorted out and compensating for some indeterminate AV delays. For instance, on OBS Studio, we introduced GStreamer to get the IP flows in rather than VLC because it was more deterministic and lower latency. But lots of tools in the toolkit. Very happy to tell you a bit more about that one day if you like. Anyway, that's me. So it only goes for me to say, hope that was of use. I look forward to having a chat with my day job talk tomorrow and on the panel a bit later on. In the meantime, grab a nice cup of tea. Back to you, Brad.